Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Criminal Justice Corner. Here at Criminal Justice Corner, we give you the real details surrounding the case, and just in case you find yourself in that same situation, we give you potential actionable advice so that you can potentially get yourself out of it. Today, as always, I have with me a very special guest. Today, I have with me Bridget Cook-Burch. Bridget is an author, but she's going to lend her expertise to a very unique case. But before we dive into the case, I'm going to let Bridget tell us a little bit about her. Bridget, how are you today?
I'm so great, Jennifer, especially getting to be on here with you.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I run a company called Your Inspired Story,
Hmm.
and I had a near-death experience in my early 20s that really changed the way that I saw myself and humanity. And it's been so fascinating. So I've been known to write riveting tales of transformation. So true stories of people who have walked through the depths of hell, but have come out on the other side and now are incredible leaders for what they have experienced. So just like your listeners looking at how can I take something practical, they've done that with their own lives and created extraordinary things and extraordinary contributions. So you and I get to talk about things that I absolutely love.
That is amazing. So you help people take like real life experiences and put them into illustration, into books, and put it to market.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes those will go into series or movies or, Dateline, which I'm sure your listeners are into. So lots of different areas where they can showcase what they have lived through and also what is possible on the other side.
That is amazing because who thought that that was even like a thing that like, because I don't get me wrong, I love true crime as much as the next person, obviously, but I did not know that a person could like help you tell your story in that way. Like, of course, they have like ghostwriters and things of that nature, but your role sounds more unique than that. It sounds like you literally help them put it to a way where like the people can truly understand, like immerse themselves into that experience. Is that more of a better way of saying it?
Absolutely. I call it transformational true crime because they can be immersed in the depth of what they were surviving or going through and sometimes the hell they were creating, right? And then on the other side of that, like where did they learn? Where did they grow? What were the huge lessons that they took from this? So I've written about a former skinhead who changed his life, the daughter of a serial killer, the 19th wife of 65 women who helped put Warren Jeffs behind bars for life plus 20 years. Young man, well, a little boy really, who lost his mom and dad through murder suicide at an army base in Mannheim, Germany. And then he became, once he found God and sculpting, a world renowned sculptor who's now working on the Statue of Responsibility. So it goes to prove that as humans, we have this like incredible spectrum of possibilities. And I just love it.
And I think it also talks about resiliency that
Mhm.
maybe, you could have, like you said, a near death experience, but you could turn that into something good. Like you
Exactly.
survived it. Now you can tell others about that experience and help them so that they can learn from it too. So not only did you learn something, but now you can help others learn from your experience as well. And I think that is huge because I'm a lifelong learner. I'll tell anybody that. But now you're helping others learn something as well, and I always say you learn something new every day. So you are taking that to a whole nother level.
Yes, and I love it. Also, one other element of that, and that's redemption, because we're all
Mhm.
just human and we're messy. So we make mistakes, and we might not be the one necessarily perpetrating a crime, but we might be making some messy mistakes along the way and
Absolutely.
being able to showcase what's possible on the other side. Not perfection,
Yes.
but joy and contribution and a greater life.
And people need to understand that and hear that because sometimes a person can think, hey, I did this terrible thing and there's no coming back from it. And
Right.
they'll listen to a podcast like mine or anybody's, and they'll listen and they'll say, hey, that person did the same exact thing I did and they bounced back. Maybe there's redemption there for me too. So I think that is huge to get the word out about like what you're saying, redemption, because not everybody hears that there's another side to that story. Sometimes you have people in your life that say, hey, you did that thing, that's the end of it. There's no coming back from it. Or also, let's say, like, you did the thing and you're in jail or prison and you're going to be there the rest of your life. There's still life there. There's still things that you can do in prison to help others learn from your story. So
And
the redemption
I've
is
worked with
huge.
a lot of men and women in prison, a lot of men and women in prison through the years, and they also have been able to teach me some things about what's possible, even when, the dark seems to be what's gonna conquer. And I'll tell you what, human resiliency is spectacular.
Right. And then too, you'll hear people say, had I not ended up in prison, I'd be dead right now. So
Mhm.
sometimes going to jail, going to prison is the difference between a person in the grave or being alive. So sometimes it helps more than it hurts. That loved
Mhm.
one of that person who ends up behind bars can still see them. That loved one of that person can still talk to them on the phone. So, hopefully it was a crime where they didn't hurt anybody, but they ended up behind bars. And so they can still learn from their mistakes, still get redemption, and help others in that. So I think that is something that we need to hear more of, that just because you made a mistake, hopefully it's not the end, like an apocalypse type mistake, even though there are those that you can still come back from. But hopefully that people hear more of, even though you made a mistake, there are ways that you can fix it or work on it, because we all know Rome wasn't built in a day. But people make mistakes and they think, this is it, my life's over. But there is still, if you're living, there's still time to turn that around.
It's so true. If you're still breathing, it ain't over.
I agree. I think that is so huge. And I just want to applaud you for your efforts in doing that unique career of yours every single day. Because you're helping so many people, and your career is helping change the lives of so many people, because it has like a ripple effect if you think about it. So you help one person, that person helps one person, and it just continues on. But not only that, with the books that you're writing, those books are being read by thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of people. How many, the impact is vast.
Yeah, it is vast. That's the what can happen when you have the courage to put your story on paper, as vulnerable as it might be. I was just speaking with someone else earlier today, and we were talking about like that vulnerability in storytelling, but how much the storyteller learns about themselves. And I call it an emerging leader, right? Because the very first draft you write is for you. It's for you to figure out what you have to say, but it's also for you to heal from mistakes. It's for you to heal from what you've gone through. And then it's for you to write to the reader and become that empowered teacher. There's a process that you go through, but you learn so much.
Wow. That is, like you said, the perfect word, transformational. That's what that is. And we've gone off down the road of something totally different, but I think it was needed and I think the listeners appreciate it. So now we're going to dive into the real reason why we're here. But I think that needed to be said because that's not said enough in today's society, considering how much we are judged as people, considering what we deal with on a daily basis. I really wanted to get that word out there, that sometimes it's not as grim as it may seem. Things can change for the better. So I just really wanted to make sure we highlighted that before we got too far into our story of TJ Leyden, which is super unique, at least I'll say for the criminal justice corner. It's not a story like we've covered before, and I love that. I love bringing unique stories to the surface. I love shining the light on different stories, because when you do that, again, you're able to learn. You're able to learn different things. You're able to dissect them and just get a different perspective. So take us back to the beginning of the TJ Leyden story, please.
Okay. So I remember I was telling you a little bit about what got me started in the first place. And
Yes.
I had a near death experience in my early 20s, and it just really changed the way that I looked at humanity. as I was mentioning, but I was working with some gang kids in Denver, and these were kids that, had made some mistakes and they were in some programs, and talk about redemption. Like, they were working to get out of it, but most of them were lifelong gang members. Mom and dad, aunt and uncle, were in a gang, and they're just expected to be a part of it. It was almost like their religion. A lot of these kids that I was working with.
Okay.
And then I wanted to write a book about redemption and what I was learning from these kids. And I thought I would write it in a fictional style. So I had this incredible story about this former skinhead who walks away from his gang, price tag on his head, and he becomes this incredible dad and leader and things like that.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking. That's your first initial thought as an author. You're like, this is what the story I'm gonna write. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly, and I woke up one night in the middle of the night, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had the makings of the most incredible fictional novel, is what I thought, but I had character scenes, plots, and even eye color, and I read out the story, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so powerful, bestseller quality," and it just blew me out of the water. Then I'm doing more research, like 6 months later, I come across this guy's website. Everything he wrote about his life and that I had written about in my fictional novel were in tandem. And the
Yes.
hero of my story was real. And then he says, "Oh, by the way, I'm looking for someone to write my life story.
No.
Have him call me." And I thought, he'll think I am a nutcase. But I reached out to him and he goes, I got someone from Newsweek that's going to write it. I'm like, okay, good for you. Well, I won't publish this because you're real. And he said, thank you. Well, unbeknownst to me, his writer from Newsweek flaked out on him, but also someone had written a movie about his life, and it was called American History X. And they didn't give him any credit for it. And
Mm,
so when I said, "Hey, look, I won't publish this because, I don't want to infringe on the realness of your story," he really
absolutely.
appreciated that. So then he came back and said, "Would you like to write my story?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And I was nervous. It was my first book and it was true crime related,
Yes.
and the people who needed it most actually were law enforcement and
Mm,
military, so that they could have an understanding of this crazy mentality of the skinhead culture, how TJ for 15 years had risen to the ranks of one of the highest ranking members in the world of Western Hammerskin Nation, how he used to get like the Ku Klux Klan and others to, do his bidding and he would do some of their dirty work. But the most fascinating part of this story is when TJ became a dad,
okay.
like a lot of people, all of a sudden, this cold heart begins to
Yes.
melt.
Yes, it does.
And yeah, he realized, like, I don't want my kids to grow up to be thugs and murderers or be murdered.
Okay.
And it really made him think. But he, when he walked away from his gang, he had a price tag on his head. He had websites that said terminate on site.
No.
Oh yeah, $3 million price tag on his head. And the thing of it is that he had come to believe this crazy thing that
Hmm.
skinheads do, right? But he never really believed it deep down. He spouted it. He was theoretical about it.
Okay.
He would preach it from the pulpit because it was where he was getting power, but it was the wrong kind of power, right? On the other side of the spectrum. So when he walked away, he had to, number one, like realize he spilled the milk. And now he had to take accountability and clean it up.
Okay.
And the other thing he realized was that he had a lot of power in words and storytelling and how to influence, but also it could be used to inspire instead of destroy.
Mm.
So that was something that was really unique about TJ for him to figure out. So he started working with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and he started working with the Simon Wiesenthal,
Okay.
with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and on White House crime panels and other things.
And all
And
of
I
this
think
is
what
behind bars?
no, he had he got out of being arrested.
Okay.
And and I should say this, he got out of prison terms. He'd been arrested 16 times. He had
Whoa.
friends who were in prison for murder and friends who had been murdered.
Okay.
He had been very lucky to skate by, but it was becoming a dad that changed his life.
Okay.
And so then he had to decide, what am I gonna do with all of this?
Right.
With all of this violence, with all of this rage, with all of this, screwed up thinking that I have been, trying to make myself believe, but I've also been spouting it. Like he
Right.
would get hate music and then he'd make CDs and he'd send it out to all of the junior high schools because the kids would listen to these messages of hate and then they would want more and then they would come and follow him.
What?
And so yeah, he was really, really good at getting these kids to do, terrible things. So
Mm,
then when he decided that he wanted to change the world in a positive way, he wanted to be a dad that his kids could be proud of.
okay.
So he went to Bakersfield Junior High
Mhm.
in California and he gave his first speech. And when he got home, there were so many death threats on his answering machine that he had to turn it over to the police for evidence.
No.
Like, people could not believe that he was spilling their secrets and that he's teaching these kids, you do not have to go down this dark path. You can be powerful in who you are, what you are, and that you can be something else in the world than someone else's minion. And so, yeah, he's really powerful. So he's been on the History Channel and Dr. Phil and many other places. And it's so interesting on the History Channel that we're doing a whole bunch of series called Gangland. Have you heard of that one?
I've definitely heard of Gangland. Yes.
Yeah. And they were trying to have just one expert, all the time for each series and not
Okay.
have any expert more than once. But, they said to the Ku Klux Klan, like, who would you consider your worst enemy? And they said, oh, yeah, TJ Leyden. And they went to the skinheads, who would you consider your worst enemy? TJ Leyden. They went inside the white supremacy in the prison. They said, who would you consider your worst enemy? TJ Leyden. So
What?
he was featured like 6 or 7 times in that Gangland series. And it's just when he decided to make a change for good and be a force for good,
Mhm.
he was even more passionate about what he was doing than when he was a force for destruction.
Whoa.
Oh.
So you were
Yeah,
able to take his story, his story of transformation and help him tell it to the masses. So now that book is on the market, right?
it is.
How long
It
has it
is.
been out?
It's been out for close to 20 years now, and it
What?
has
And
helped
that's your first
kids.
book.
Yep, that was my first book. Help kids stay out of prison. It's gotten a lot of people in prison deciding to leave their
Mm.
gangs. It continues to have a really amazing effect. And I will tell you this, TJ ended up having a brain tumor and he had some effects from this and lost his ability to be able to speak. And he was a
Man.
really powerful speaker, but this book became his voice. And
Nice.
I will never regret, having the opportunity to craft that book. I will also tell you because, there's a reason people are attracted to true crime. So your listeners
Absolutely.
will love this, is that I had to face a lot of my own darkness inside. I had to face a lot of the lessons and the tragedy and the trauma and then also how do you bring light into this place? How do I
Absolutely.
bring light into my own life, into those dark places?
Yeah.
And his story is incredibly inspiring about how to do that.
Oh my gosh. So where can the listeners find this book?
On Amazon is the best place to find it or Cedar Fort Books. So either one of those places.
And what is the name of it?
It's called Skinhead Confessions: From Hate to Hope.
Ooh, I like that title. And
Yeah.
it's written by you, Bridget Cook-Burch.
I co-wrote it with TJ,
Okay.
and it has a really fascinating foreword written by Jason Alexander from Seinfeld.
Hmm.
He writes about hate and how it has to be carefully taught. And
Okay.
it's really ironic to have him, a Jewish person, write the foreword about a skinhead who changes his life.
Absolutely. That's probably unheard of.
Mhm.
So that's huge. And is there like a website as well, like just for like TJ?
TJ does have a website. I would have to look that up while we're talking and then make sure that I can give you the right thing.
Okay. So while you're doing that, do you have other books that you've written like out now?
Yeah. So the one that I wrote after that was called Shattered Silence: The Untold Story of a Serial Killer's Daughter with Melissa Moore. And she's the daughter of the Happy Face serial killer.
Wow.
And there is actually a series out right now on Paramount Plus based on
Well,
this book, even though it's 15 years old, but
yes.
based on this book and then Melissa's experiences since that time. And it's called Happy Face. And they just barely finished season one.
Okay.
And there's a lot of clamor for season two. So Dennis Quaid
Whoa.
plays her father. And there's some incredible actors and actresses in this. And the themes are amazing because there is this element of bringing compassion to true crime,
Right.
but also how true crime can twist the psyche. Being obsessed with it can get youngsters, in trouble, within their own groups and decisions that they make. And also, what happens if you have a skeleton in the family closet? What do you do? Who do you
Absolutely.
turn to? Where do you go? Who do you tell? Who do you not tell?
Yes.
So that's
That's
also an
huge.
issue.
That is so huge. So Dennis Quaid plays the father, and you're saying this is called Happy Face, and it's on Paramount Plus currently.
Yes, it is.
And this is like an adaptation of a book that you've already written.
Yes. The
That's
Shattered
huge,
Silence.
Bridget.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and I'm proud of the whole team and how they put that together.
So you've
So
seen the
it's
whole series?
well, I saw from beginning to end series 1. We'll have to see if they make a series 2. It'll be fun.
That's awesome. That is a
Yep.
huge accomplishment. I'm sure there are others, but that's huge to have that, made that way. Like to have it on Paramount Plus, to have a huge actor. Dennis Quaid, everybody knows Dennis Quaid. Like, that's
Yeah.
huge. Like,
You should check out his IMDb. He has things on there that I had no idea, and I've been a big fan of his for a long time.
and
But
that's
it's
exactly
interesting.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, he just played Reagan, President Ronald Reagan,
Oh
and
my
then all of a
gosh.
sudden here's this new thing. But one of the things that was intriguing to him, Jennifer, was the father-daughter relationship
Okay,
and the twisting that can happen, but also the untwisting that can happen. He was
definitely.
intrigued by that, and he was also intrigued by Melissa's courage because she really did become a producer in LA, and she produced a show called Monster in My Family, and she brought
I've
together.
heard of that one. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I've seen it too. I like that show.
Yeah, so she brought together the families of serial killers, like think Boston Bomber, right? And
Yeah.
then the families of the victims, and instead of there being hatred and animosity, that they all realized that they were all victims, but now it was time to heal.
Yeah,
And frankly, that's gonna need to happen in our society in a number of ways. So,
definitely.
she had enough courage to do that. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think just this newfound, I want to say appreciation for the true crime genre is opening the doors for that type of healing. Because
Mhm.
when there are victims, there has to be some kind of healing so that the cycle is broken. Because if
Yeah.
we just continue to, like in the past, I'll say, sweep it under the rug, the cycle will
Mhm.
not be broken. Was what do they say? Hurt people hurt people. So if you're just
Right.
going along with this cycle of family violence or whatever the case may be, it's just going to repeat itself. So, with this newfound understanding of true crime, now we're recognizing this person needs help in whatever way that it needs to happen. So now we can bring healing to that family, to that friend, to whomever it is, so that that cycle can be broken. And then guess what? Overall, globally, we can reduce the crime rate.
Exactly. In
I love
fact,
that.
you were asking about a URL for TJ,
Yes.
and because of his stroke, he doesn't have his own, but there was one I wanted to share with you. It's called
Ooh.
theforgivenessproject.com,
Okay.
and you can find out more on there. His book is also available at Barnes& and Noble, and we love that.
Yes, because you could just walk there and get it tangible. I love a good tangible book.
Well, I know, me too. So it's wonderful, and it's still available even though it's been out for a number of years because there's a lot of people who have been really working to understand this mentality and then
Yeah.
also what's possible. So
Yeah. And like I said, I feel like the true crime genre and the love for that genre is opening up so many avenues, so many doors for people who would have normally been closed to them, and or it would have been taboo. So now we're able to talk about these things and get a better understanding and help the people who it needs to help. And then also explore things that are normally not talked about or expressed. So things that we might suppress, now we can say, well, what about this? Or what about that? I've been feeling this way. And instead of just suppressing it, we can just talk about it and move on versus we're
mhm.
just packing it down when a simple conversation could have mitigated the whole thing.
Exactly. There's so much that can happen when we can communicate.
Yes.
This is one thing that true crime has brought up is, we have an obsession because we want to understand ourselves and others more.
Yes.
And it is the darker parts of ourselves, it's the shadow of ourself.
Yes.
And in that is also where the seeds of our greatest glory lies. It's where we find out who we really are, not in hopefully doing the true crime, but in just, understanding it and being able to understand others. And that means that we can make greater choices in our own life.
Absolutely. And I love that. I totally, totally, totally love that. Where, considering what we've been talking about, considering the TJ Leyden, considering the new crime wave of opening up doors, what would be a good takeaway for our listeners?
Oh, so many.
Yes,
I would
totally.
say today, based on what we've been talking about, is number one, humanity is really messy. And to have some compassion and self-forgiveness, because you're never going to do 100% of everything perfect or right.
Yeah.
And so to have compassion, but the second thing is that redemption is possible. I have seen, like, I call these extreme stories, where people have somewhere on the pendulum, they're clear on this side and the other, but it helps to show a lot of us what is possible. Oh my gosh, if TJ could do that, if Melissa could do that, if
Yeah.
Rebecca could do that, if Gary could do that, I can get up and go to work tomorrow. I can hug my kids and tell them how much I love them. I can reconnect. I can
Yeah.
forgive myself. I can do some amazing things because these people really inspire. They came from the dark, but they're living in the light and doing great and amazing things.
And I love that. I think that's really good. I love those takeaways. Now, where can the audience find you? If they have this dynamic story that they want to get out and tell the world, how can they reach you?
Wonderful. Well, I have a website called yourinspiredstory.com. And I would love to hear from you. So we have a place where you can sign up for a free discovery session. And just so you know, we do this dynamic inspired writers retreat. It's up on a lake, a beautiful turquoise lake in the mountains. I do it twice a year, and it's a very safe place for these stories to be able to come out. When Melissa contacted me, she said, I wanted to find someone who could see something in the darkness and create something of hope and healing. And so, if you're into the really, really dark stuff, I'm probably not your person. But if you're into the how did I get over these situations? How did I come to inspire? Why is it so many people are asking me to write a book? I can help you figure that out. And we do that at the retreat. So we work with, self-help, Olympians, athletes, true crime situations and circumstances, and beautiful memoirs. And so we get together and we really dig into the power of story and then how you can get it out into the world in a beautiful way. So Inspired Writers Retreat. And then find me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. I would love to be your friend.
I love that. And I just know that you're going to get like a floodgate of people with their stories because there's so many people with unique stories out there. And they're just like waiting for the right time, the right person to help them express themselves. So why not now?
Exactly. Why not now?
Why
Come on
not
over. We'd
now?
love to see you.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
this is amazing. And I just applaud you again for your efforts in helping people find their voice. Because that's what I always say Criminal Justice Corner is. It's a place for people to express themselves and get the chance to say what they've always wanted to say or talk about the things that they've always wanted to talk about. Because normally you don't get to do that. There's normally not a platform for people. So I really wanted this to be a safe space, and you are giving them a larger platform. So I think it's amazing that we were able to come together today.
Me too. Thank you, Jennifer. I think it's extraordinary what you do create with this show, and a special thanks to you for the gifts to your listeners every time. Thank
I
you.
am honored that they listen. So thank you, and thank the listeners. And I want to thank everybody and remind them to please like, subscribe, and share this episode. If you have not already done so, please tell a friend to tell a friend about Criminal Justice Corner. And we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.